Welcome to Talk Mental Health with Logan Noon. This is episode 8, Attention Restoration Theory to Improve ADHD. This episode is with my good friend Tommy, who lives with ADHD, and rather than using medication, he prefers to use attention restoration theory, which in short is getting outside to improve your concentration. This episode's a lot of fun. I think you guys are really going to like it. I want to have a disclaimer, though, that all of these views that we talk about are Tommy's own views on attention restoration theory, and he is no longer associated with University of Utah or any of the research that is going on there. Enjoy.
Start off with this conversation. So you watch professional disc golf?
Yeah.
I think are the first person that I've ever heard say that.
Yeah.
Where do you go watch professional disc golf?
On YouTube. You can also watch it. There's a full professional disc golf tour. They go. They play about every other weekend. And
how many views do these videos get?
Like 100,000.
My YouTube video only has 40,000.
Well,
that just makes me feel so down and ashamed.
You're not a professional yet.
All right, but it was a dope game you were watching this morning, or match? What do they even call these? Same as golf matches?
Yeah. No, I was just laughing because when we did the audio test, I sound like one of the announcers, and I thought it was really funny.
I mean, you describing this right now, I just picture, like, you know the movie Dodgeball, where they have the announcers?
It's not...
ESPN Tiocho.
It's not horribly different. The two guys who announced most of it play on the tour.
Okay. And players, commentators.
Yeah, and they film it, and then they announce it afterwards when they're, like, in their hotel room.
That's so funny.
And it's really amusing to watch them.
So do they comment on themselves?
Occasionally, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, occasionally they'll comment on themselves, which is always really amusing.
That's hysterical. And these guys just must be amazing.
Yeah, they're pretty good.
Just cash.
Yeah, they're like 16, like 14 to 16 under and around.
Damn. That is crazy. And it does get me psyched up for we're going to play some man's golf, real golf. Later on after
Ball golf, as they call it.
Ball golf,
Ball
as they
golf,
call it
yeah.
in the frizz world. What do they call it again? Frothing.
Disc golf.
What's frothing then?
Well, frothing is what you do when you're like a drunk frat boy at Georgia State.
But that does involve disc golf.
It does.
Oh, okay.
But it's just not, it's like the activity versus the sport.
Oh, I'm confused already.
Anyways.
I digress. Well, thank you for coming on Mental Health Talk with Logan Noon. I think that's the name I've decided on, but it probably is going to change like 5 times at some point.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Yeah. So you are here to talk about attention restoration theory. Okay. So what is your connection to this, and when did you kind of get in it?
I went to undergrad at the University of Utah. I was a member of an outdoor education and leadership cohort on the honors college. And we all lived together. Every Friday we had it was compulsory that you go out and do something, but we all enjoyed it. It was something fun to do. We'd go climb or hike or do something with professors. And at the beginning of the year, they had a 4-day rafting trip for everyone to get to know each other. And the second year I was at Utah, I decided I wanted to be like a mentor for the floor. And on that rafting trip, they decided that they were going to do some research on attention restoration theory with David Strayer, who's a professor at the University of Utah. And I was lucky enough to be able to go on that rafting trip and administer some of the examinations that we used to see how well people were restoring their attention.
Okay. So to the listener out there who's never heard of attention restoration theory, how would you describe it in your own words?
Basically, if you go outside, you'll be more relaxed, happier, and able to focus more. It sounds grandiose, but that's basically what the different facets of the research come down to.
Yeah, and it sounds almost so simplistic, but it's almost hard to argue against it.
It is. It's also hard to argue for it, I feel like. A lot of people that I've talked to, they're like, well, sure, going outside makes you focus more, I guess. Everyone is skeptical because it seems so easy.
Yeah.
And so that's where the research really backing it up is super important.
Yeah, and it's hard to measure. Well, so quickly reading the Wikipedia definition.
Which I did this morning.
You did too?
I did.
Fantastic. Attention restoration theory asserts that people can concentrate better after spending time in nature or even looking at scenes of nature. Kind of basic. So even before University of Utah, though, you almost had an appreciation for this.
Certainly.
In a sense. Because you grew up in a family that was like very outdoorsy, right?
Yeah.
And you have ADD. Or is it ADHD?
I believe it's ADHD.
ADHD. And when was the first time you were told that?
So I was told that actually my junior year of college, when I was getting ready to take the MCAT. I was getting tested for dyslexia because I'm also dyslexic, and I was trying to get some accommodations on the MCAT, and the doctor I was seeing said, they're really kind of stingy about accommodations for being dyslexic. You seem like you may be ADHD, and they're a lot more willing to give accommodations for that. So why don't we try that?
That's crazy.
Yeah.
They don't give accommodations for dyslexia, but they do?
They do.
I mean, it seems like just both should be entitled.
Sure. Yeah.
But especially the person that can't really read. Damn.
Correct. Yeah. And so that's something really frustrating that I've dealt with for a long time. I tried to get accommodations on the ACT. Both times I had it documented from a physician that I had, that I was dyslexic. And pretty much all I'd ever get back was, well, you have good grades, so it can't be hurting you that much.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Well, damn. Okay, so you got this junior year of college. That for you, it's like 2 years ago.
Right, yeah, that is. That's two years ago.
Which is hysterical. My junior year of college is like 10 years ago. But, okay, so junior year of college, you're about to take the MCAT. So was that the first time did you get prescribed any sort of medication for this?
No, not right away. I think like 6 months later, I decided to try taking... blanking on the name right now. Adderall.
Okay.
I took like the 12-hour release and really didn't like how it made me feel.
How did it make you feel?
It made me feel like really happy, which everyone always thinks is weird. They're like, what's wrong with being happy?
Yeah.
But I could feel it wear off and I would like fall off of it and just didn't like how it was altering what I felt. And so decided that I would rather not take it.
Did it help your focus?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it did at least have that benefit.
Certainly.
But you didn't like the
I just
side
didn't like the
effects.
side effects.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So besides, at least initially with the medication, like what were you sort of doing to managing your ADD?
I mean, I have a really like hectic workflow.
Yeah.
I tend to study for 10 minutes and then watch 20 minutes of snowboarding videos and then finally I'll kick it into focus. And that's one thing with ADHD that people forget is there's the hyper focused part as well. And so, when I can get into a mood like that, and it particularly does come after I, watch a snowboarding video or go outside and do something, I'm able to get a lot of work done.
Essentially get in that hyper-focused state of
right.
mind. Yeah,
right.
which I've heard a lot about in ADD.
Yeah, it does. I think going outside helps me get there. Yeah.
Okay. So that's kind of what you use to get in that hyper-focus state of mind.
Yeah, that's my personal experience with
So
it.
did you already find you were doing that prior to even learning about attention restoration theory?
I don't know if I wasn't doing it on purpose.
Yeah.
Sometimes it happened and was like, oh man, I can get a lot done today. And I didn't know if it was just because I was exhausted because I went, on a long hike that day and was just so tired that all I could do was study, or what caused it. But I definitely saw a correlation but never intentionally suck it out.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I remember when we were planning this yesterday, or, we've been trying to do this for a little while.
Yeah.
So yesterday after anatomy lab, I was calling you to go mudding up in Sela, and so I went out mudding and I was having a blast just, revving that old Jeep of mine around like a little toddler with a go-kart, having the time of my life. But then I figured I was out in this beautiful area surrounded by nothing and just beautiful nature. I was like, God, I need to meditate. I never meditate as much as I want to. I'm going to take advantage of this beautiful time I have where it's sunny, and I'm going to meditate. Mm-hmm. And normally I only meditate for 10, 15 minutes. I say that's all the time I have, total bullshit. But yesterday, I was like, okay, I'm going to go 30 minutes today. I'm going to try to really push it hard today. And I found that 30 minutes was so much easier than trying to meditate in my office at home.
Yeah.
Because, at home, I have on normally a YouTube video where I put on some of that, weird, yoga music,
Yeah.
And, at least in the state of meditation, I try to always, focus on my breathing, but of course my mind is going to go elsewhere. Like it naturally does. Like it naturally always does. But in that meditative practice, I try to get back to, okay, let's focus on the moment. Just in and out, in and out. And it's a struggle for that 10 to 15 minutes. But yesterday was a totally different experience. Because instead of me having to consciously realize that my brain was racing and, oh, okay, we're racing, come back to normal, I would hear a bird chirp. Or I would hear kind of the wind really go, like a gust all of a sudden. And that would kind of bring me back suddenly to that moment and that state of mind. And it was such a more beneficial and enjoyable meditation practice for that 30 minutes yesterday. I was like, damn, this is attention restoration theory. This totally makes sense. And I've kind of been doing it for a while, but I need to kind of apply this, scientific evidence a little bit more in my life.
Yeah. It's a really cool thing. It is. All my best memories are outside. And I just can't recommend it enough.
So while I'm kind of just there's the four aspects of attention restoration theory, just for our listeners, they don't know me, of course, the same way that you know them. Why don't you quickly tell them just how much of an outdoorsman you truly are? You may not want to embellish, I guess, yourself too much here, but you're going, Denali this summer? You're a hardcore outdoorsman.
Yeah, I wouldn't go that far. I like to spend time outside, and I do it as much as I can. Most years I spend over 50 nights in a tent at least.
Awesome.
I figured it out. I bought my tent for like $250, and I'm down to 75 cents a night now. Every time I spend the night, it's
I'm
just
saving money.
Yeah. I love it. Every chance I get, even in medical school, I probably still get out and hike 2 or 3 days a week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And you find that really helps out with your ADD. Okay. Now, this theory also mentions how looking at nature photos can also have a effect. I'm guessing it's less. What do you think?
It's not as significant, and I know that Dr. Strayer is doing research on that right now, comparing the two. They're using a lot of VR now. There was a guy in England who was doing stuff in a full 3D room, which was really cool. And he's had some pretty good results. They did a study in a California state prison.
Okay.
And it was not as scientific of a study, but basically they had one weight room that was your normal prison weight room, cement walls, everyone yelling, dropping weights and everything. They had another weight room where on all four walls they just had, that Windows background that's just the green hill coming down with the perfect blue sky and cloud floating across. They just had that. And they change up the video every once in a while. And they found that whenever one inmate would start yelling, other inmates would tell him to calm down because they wanted to watch their videos. They're like, don't ruin this. This is our 40 minutes that we get to be, quote unquote outside.
Yeah.
And they've found that they really did a lot better in that situation.
Yeah, interesting. Because I wonder, if that could be applied, of course, to inner cities, or maybe even places, similar to, I guess, kind of more Seattle, or further north where they just don't get any sun exposure. People maybe don't go outside a ton. Maybe if they're in, the height of Minnesota or something crazy like that.
Sure.
So yeah, that is interesting.
They did a study in New York, and they found that merely by having sight of nature out their windows, just to the park, that at-risk youth had increased self-discipline.
Okay.
All sorts of things like that.
I saw that. Okay, yeah, I read that study actually this morning.
Yeah. They do a lot of studies on this in like the far northern countries.
Okay.
So like in the U.S. it would be Alaska, especially during the winter. Places like that have huge trouble with like alcoholism and suicide just because it's dark all the time. So a lot of the Scandinavian nations are doing work on it as well.
Okay.
And so they've seen again beneficial results.
So there's like, it says the natural environment must have 4 properties in order to provide this restoration effect. 1, extent, the scope to feel immersed in the environment. 2, being away, providing an escape from habitual activities. 3, soft fascinations, aspects of the environment that capture attention effortlessly. And compatibility, individuals must want to be exposed to and appreciate the environment. So what do you think is kind of the most important pillar, and like, what do you kind of think about that?
I think
these 4 pillars.
The soft fascination is the most important thing in my mind. It's especially, I think, when you're looking at it from an ADHD point of view, those soft fascinations that just grab you and you end up enthralled in these, minutia. I think that's what triggers me anyways to start into that hyper-focused state.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Because, yesterday when I was meditating, like I said, I would just kind of hear those birds, or like the sun and the clouds would just, I like to open my eyes a little bit in meditation. And I would just notice something a little bit different, and it would bring me back to that present moment. When I try to meditate inside, it's like I really have to focus consciously. Instead of like this says, I think it uses the word effortlessly attention, or something like that. And so I totally agree. I think that's really the most important one. Now, the 4th one I thought was a little interesting. It's almost like compatibility. People have to like nature in a sense.
Yeah.
So what would you say to someone who's like, okay, I like attention restoration theory, but I hate hiking?
You start small. Don't go hiking. Go, here in Washington, we're super lucky to be able to be, I go hiking from my house. It's a 5-minute drive and I'm ready to go. But just go sit down in a park. I don't think necessarily you need to love it to start with. Okay. I think you can learn to love it.
Okay.
And I think you can learn to love it. Just start small. Don't go crazy.
Yeah.
Don't read wild and think, oh, I need to go backpacking tomorrow. I'm going to go do the Pacific Crest Trail.
Yeah.
Because
after that movie came out or whatever.
Yeah, that might not end up super well.
Yeah, certainly. Now, what about, you kind of mentioned like the northern countries. And, so someone who's listening right now who's maybe in the middle of Russia,
sure,
and it's terrible weather, like what could they do if, going out in the park isn't realistic because it's dangerous, literally.
Yeah.
Because of the weather.
There are a number of different things I think you could do. You can, watch a video of nature. Obviously, it's not going to be the same result, but it can definitely help. One thing that I really have been wanting to do lately is to just grow like a little garden in my house.
Okay.
It's a little small garden. Whether or not that, pertains to this, I'm not entirely sure.
But I think it would.
You get that green space, and even just looking at it, I mean, there's so much minutia that you'd never notice. Tracing veins through a leaf, I'm sure you could do it for hours.
Yeah. Well, the one thing I found, Magdalena, my wife, you've been to my house recently, right? She has put so many damn plants in the house. And I'm always going, how much money are you spending on this soil and new plants and pots? And I'm always on her. But at the end of the day, I have really liked the new kind of feel of the house. And the thing that I noticed the biggest difference is the smell. Like when I sleep, like that bedroom smells a little bit different than my living room with the different plants that are in. And it does feel a little bit calmer. It makes my house almost feel bigger in a sense because each room will have its own distinct smell.
Okay, that's interesting.
Because it doesn't almost feel like one little tiny apartment.
Right,
it feels like
these
3, yeah. But it feels like 3 different worlds I'm going into because there's all these different plants and she's always yelling at me to water them and spray them, which I don't do, of course, to at least the time scale that she demands, but it has certainly helped. So the listeners, I think we haven't mentioned that you're my classmate.
True.
Yeah. So you're a medical student.
Yes, sir.
So you're killing it, obviously, doing a great job. You have,
Trying.
I think, the greatest beard in our class. It's a fantastic beard.
Appreciate that.
Fantastic beard. Makes his own beard oil. He'll hopefully one day sell it. We don't know.
Probably do that.
But, so you choose, you're a medical student who has ADD.
Yeah.
And I don't know, there's a lot of them out there. Well, I think there's more than people think, but there certainly is this still big stigma attached to it. So first off, I really appreciate you being open about your ADD and
Sure.
taking a similar philosophy that I do. Why do you choose to do that?
I don't really think it's that much of a detriment, honestly. Mm-hmm. I think so many people have been diagnosed with it now. I don't know. I just don't really...
Not embarrassed by it.
Yeah. If I end up working in a place that is going to not give me a job because of that, then I don't know if I necessarily want to work there to start with.
Yeah, I like that attitude a lot.
So, yeah.
But I just think also, when someone at least gets initially diagnosed with ADD, they think like, well, damn, like, I'm destined to be a dumb kid. I'm not going to be able to do these things. And it's like, so being able to look at you and like other people who are open about their ADD, it's like, no, like, I'm at the top of my academic performance in medical school, doing well, passing my classes, and like, I really like comparing and contrasting both of you because Ryan, he got diagnosed much earlier than you. Mm-hmm. He was, I think, like 8. He's been on medication now for a long time and doing very well. You got diagnosed when you were like 21. And, you choose the medication isn't great for you. But so you really try to apply this attention restoration theory, and you said go on hikes. Now, it's not realistic that you can go on a hike every day in medical school.
No.
So how do you balance that? And like, what other things do you do to help out your ADD?
I think the biggest thing I try and do is just not fight it. Mm-hmm. If I'm not focusing, then I just accept that. I'm like, okay, I'm not focusing right now. It will do me no good to try and study because I'm not going to retain anything right now. And I'll go do something. I might just do like 50 push-ups as fast as I can. Just something to try and take my mind off of it. Okay. And then try and study again. If I'm still not feeling it, then I won't. And, sometimes you have to force yourself to study. Okay. And I think that's one thing that, like, deadlines do for me is when I get to that deadline, it's like, okay, like I can't do it today. Like, I just need to study no matter what. And so I'm able to force myself. Are you naturally a
procrastinator?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. 100%.
I think most people are, but I think especially people with ADD.
Yeah. But I mean, there's a pond like 4 minutes from my house, and I really love red-winged blackbirds. I think they're one of the coolest and most underrated birds out there. I don't know if any of your listeners are.
I mean, there's only like 6 of them, so statistically, it's going to be hard for one of them
to find an ornithologist. But yeah, I think they're like one of the coolest birds ever. They're super common, and they have the most beautiful call, and they're super vocal. And so you can go down to the pond, and even if I don't see them, like I can hear them, and just relax down there for a little bit. Sometimes I'll bring my notes down and try and study there.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay,
so which I don't know how I feel about.
Okay,
I don't really want to like pollute that mentally, but sometimes you have to. So
yeah. Now, do you meditate?
Mm-mm.
No.
I should. There are a lot of things I should do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Meditate, yoga.
I would argue actually you do meditate and you don't even know it. I think
that's probably true.
When you hike, what do you think about?
Not a whole lot.
Not a lot.
Yeah.
So I call that meditation right there.
Sure.
It's not meditation. Yeah, it's not meditation sitting like the old Buddhist, just chilling necessarily like I was trying to do yesterday, but it's still it is a form of meditation where you're just focusing on that moment and it is mindful and you're enjoying just everything about that moment. So I think you are naturally a meditator. So okay, so someone who is listening who just got diagnosed, haven't had a good experience with the meds, you would encourage them, why don't you try to take an appreciation for outside or maybe grow some plants in your home?
Yeah, it's fine. I mean, if you're like heart set on not taking the meds, I didn't really give the meds as much of a shot as I should have because I had like 2 months before I was taking the MCAT. I didn't really want to like totally change what I was doing.
Yeah.
And then after I took the MCAT, it was summer, and then it was my senior year, and I'd already gotten into medical school, so I didn't really go back to it.
Are you open to maybe taking them again?
Yeah. I mean, I don't have any stigma against taking meds.
I think it's smart to just take a balanced stance, because there's a lot of people with mental illness who completely write off medication. And then there's also some people with mental illness that demand that everyone who has a mental illness needs to take medication. And it's like, I currently still take medication. Am I going to have to take it forever? Like, I don't know. Like, we'll see. It's just like, I like being open to the idea both ways of like, yeah, maybe the rest of my life I will take this every single day. Or maybe science will get to some point where maybe I won't need to. But I just want to take today I am going to use it, but just be open to the future.
Yeah, I think, whatever you can do that works best for you to have it, well controlled. Yeah, is what you should do.
Well, and you are well controlling. You passed all your classes. You're inspiring. I think a lot of other people in our class who are dealing with ADD, because there definitely are a lot of them who don't want to tell people. And I really think that's awesome. I think you're setting a good example by just trying to really get outside. We're very fortunate being out here in Yakima. It's gorgeous. And, we have such, I was able to go off-roading yesterday after anatomy lab. That was so cool. And I was thinking about how if I went to medical school in Harlem, like I originally wanted to, or maybe, Vallejo, California, I would never really be able to do that. I'd have to drive an hour or two to just have that access.
Right. Well, and one thing, I mean, to take it back to the research, one thing they've even found is that people who live, and I want to find it so I don't quote it incorrectly. Let's see. They basically found that people who live close to parks, whether or not they go to them at all, they have a decreased risk of, living within a half mile of a green space. They had a decreased risk of depression, anxiety, heart disease, diabetes, asthma, and migraines, as well as they looked at a panel of 15 other diseases.
Yeah.
And so even if you don't go to them, like you're mentioning living in Yakima, how close to us are there, miles and miles of apple and cherry orchards?
Yeah.
No different than a park, especially if you're not going to it. And so, yeah, I think we're really lucky to live here.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's kind of get back to the theory a little bit. So, how did they test this theory? How did you participate in research of this theory?
So what I did is we administered two different tests. We had two groups. There were about 80 students on the trip. There were two groups, and let's see. So I was one of the researchers. There was another researcher. We each took one group, administered a different test on the first day. So I administered something called the multiple uses test. And it's a test of creativity. So basically what I do, what it would say is hammer. And then it'd have a bunch of lines underneath hammer. And you have to write down all the other things you could use a hammer for.
Okay.
So you can use it for hammering nails. You can use it for a doorstop. You can use it to scratch your back. You can use it to smash a spider, scare away a dog, whatever it may be. And so we administered one of those, half the group got that. And then the other half of the group got a test called the remote associates test. And so this remote associates test, what you do is there are 3 words. So the 3 words, an example would be belly, barrel, and root.
Okay.
And the person taking the test would have to figure out what the one word that brings those 3 together is.
Okay.
So the answer to that one would be beer.
Yeah.
You have a beer belly, a beer barrel, and root beer.
Okay.
And so we did that. And then on the 3rd day of the rafting trip, the groups received the opposite test.
Okay.
And so that way that, they weren't having any learned skill bias or anything like that. And so, yeah.
Okay. So I guess was the creativity is spurred out of increased attention, or I guess is this kind of applying this theory to a creativity aspect? Creativity
is one of the easier cognitive functions to test.
Okay.
so that I think that's a lot of why that was chosen. They've also more recently I've seen Dr. Strayer's taken EEGs into the EEGs into the field, electroencephalograms, and then there's a Korean researcher, and they've really embraced this theory in South Korea. He took, they embraced it so much that they're building $100 million healing complex, and they're planting 34 forests that were supposed to actually be planted by last year. So hopefully they're there.
Okay.
But he took a functional MRI into the field.
Oh.
And he showed that when looking at volunteers in an urban setting, the brain showed more blood flow to the amygdala, which processes fear and anxiety.
Yeah.
In contrast, in the natural scene, the functional MRI lit up the anterior geniculate and the insula, which is where empathy and altruism are located.
Interesting.
So,
that is super cool.
Yeah, there's far more research than just being creative.
And you know what? I actually really want to get into functional MRI research.
Yeah.
There's this psychiatrist out of LA, Dr. Daniel Amen, and he does he makes his diagnosis based off functional MRI scans and seeing, where the blood flow is going, and tries to make, his decisions based off that. And I think that's such a better model for psychiatry because it's so much more objective versus now where it's, mostly based off talk and observations. And, I really want to change psychiatry in that sense.
Sure, yeah.
So that's really cool that I don't know how you bring a functional MRI into the field.
Well, I mean, when you look at they're building a $100 million facility in a forest specifically to do this. So I think...
Oh, damn, I didn't catch that part.
No, it's specifically to do this.
Oh, wow.
They've planted 34 new forests. They set up a whole train. They call it the Happy Train, where they take children who are being bullied out into the forest for 2 days.
Oh, okay.
Which seems a little extreme. You can just drive them. They don't have to take a train. But
weird, creepy train.
Whatever it may be. So they've gotten wholeheartedly behind it.
Cool. And this was out of Korea.
This is in Korea. Yeah.
Okay,
so
cool.
The article I read relating to it talked about how the work culture there is so demanding.
Yeah.
Samsung did a survey, and 70% of their employees said their job made them depressed.
Damn.
And
sadly, that's not probably that far off from medicine.
Sure. Yeah. No, I don't think it would be that different. But they took, they're taking a lot of positive steps to try and improve that. So.
Yeah. Well, I know you've mentioned emergency med to me, maybe radiology, surgery. Have you ever thought about maybe going into maybe a neurology and doing research in this field?
I think doing neurology would be super interesting. I am garbage at neurology.
Maybe now. That doesn't mean you can't work at it. I'm garbage at basically everything in medical school. But, I know if I just continue to work at it because it's what I love. And it seems like you obviously love this stuff.
I do care about this, yeah. I don't necessarily see... certainly there's a role that the research could play. But I think I can play not equally, but a significant role just as, an ER physician or whatever it may be, just speaking out in support of this idea.
Yeah. So. Well, really in all fields of medicine, just kind of a better way to support work-life balance.
Yeah.
It kind of seems like, because it has both, I know we talked a lot about attention deficit disorder today, but I really think emotionally, just getting out there, and at least for me, I found that it was such a better meditation practice that I had. So if I was talking to someone right now who, maybe just got diagnosed with depression or bipolar, you name it, whatever, maybe they could apply this theory to their management of mental illness, and especially with the meditation, because it was so fun yesterday. Just there was nobody probably within a mile of me. It was, the sun was shining, and it was such a nice meditation that I had. One of probably the most memorable ones that I've ever had in a while, because I was thinking about this theory and trying to really apply it. But so that's what I would say. So anything else you want to kind of say to maybe potential listeners?
I'm sure if you have outdoorsy friends on Facebook, you probably saw this posted about 1,000 times, because I know I did. But the National Geographic article, Your Brain on Nature, is fantastic. It's super interesting. It does a really good job of kind of bringing together a lot of these different research points in a not super technical way. They went on a camping trip with Dr. Strayer.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, it's really interesting, especially because the author's from New York, not a big camper. And so hearing their point of view on it and how, they felt the change happen in 3 days is really interesting.
Damn, just 3 days. Oh, wow.
Yeah, so they say Dr. Strayer believes that that's the cutoff, is 3 days.
3 days of
to get
camping out in the
forest.
forest.
The most out of it if you spend 3 days.
Well, we'll put a link to that article in the show notes so anyone listening can easily find it. Yeah. Tommy, thank you so much for coming on today.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having
I'm excited now to go beat your ass in golf. I know I'm 0 for 3, and 0 for 3. Just for any listeners trying to tune in here, I love golf. I probably golf about 25 times, probably if not more than that, per year. Tommy, on the other hand, took 6 years off, I think, golf.
Yep. Yeah.
First day back beat me. So, yeah, that's where I'm at and trying to fight my way back here to victory. So, thanks for listening today, and thanks for coming on, Tommy.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Cheers.
And that's a wrap. Thank you so much for listening. I greatly, greatly appreciate it. Please be sure to tune in next week where I have on my classmate Hannah, who's going to talk about what her life really changed into after dealing with sexual assault in college. It's certainly a hard episode to listen to, but it's really a fantastic conversation. She has a lot of great insight and lessons from this experience, and I really think that you guys will appreciate listening to it. But once again, thank you for listening. Please subscribe to my podcast, give it a rating on iTunes or however you're really listening, and I hope you guys have a good day.